Okay, continuing to talk about gender and gender differences in society, I think one thing which seems to be pretty obvious is that throughout most of society, most of history, uh, there has been a gender inequality, uh, especially as defined by access to resources and power. Uh, and we find that it's almost universal that there has been a power shift towards men and women have been disadvantaged. Uh, and one really has to ask why. It's not inherently obvious. Certainly, women can do almost all the tasks that men can do. There are obvious physical differences, regardless of the fuzziness of the boundaries. Generally speaking, the differences are pretty clear. So, and regardless of those physical differences, we certainly have seen in our modern history that women can do all of the tasks that men typically do in either be it physical or intellectual. So, what is that seemingly universal factor? And what does it mean that they do not have the same the same power and access? Well, first of all, we have to see that the question is: are there any exceptions? Are there any exceptions? And I've seen references to two exceptions: the Iroquois tribe, which has been cited as a more egalitarian meaning having equal roles for the men and women in society. But in closer look, it really isn't. The women had special status, veto power about going to war or about making peace. But they were not regarded as equal, not equal intellectually and not equal in decision making and all the other types of decisions. Men were kept secrets from them because they weren't considered well on a high enough level to be able to be party to some of their decision making processes. On the other hand, there is one tribe, the Mabuti tribe of the Pygmies in the Congo, which seem to have very much egalitarian society. But that is a very primitive type of society. And we'll go back to hunter-gathering society, and we'll go back to the significance of that. So, be it as even throughout all of the cultures that Western society has come in contact to, it seems that we're talking now here about something which is pretty much universal. So why is it like that? Well, one might guess that there might be some sort of biological basis for the men to have power over the women. By the way, which would not justify it, okay? It would explain it, but not necessarily mean that it's moral or ethical. But with the inquiring mind, one must ask and look at this possibility. So biologically, as we touched in the previous lecture, there are obvious differences. And we're not talking necessarily about anatomically, although that we'll talk about that in a moment. But we do know that men have a greater amount of the hormone testosterone, a particularly male hormone, although women do have testosterone also. And testosterone has been shown over and over again to not only have an effect on libido, but also has an effect on aggressiveness. Higher levels of testosterone correlate with higher levels of aggressiveness. And be that on a personality type of level, so a constant type of level, or whether situationally controlled, as in soldiers going to war, their testosterone goes up. It seems to have a pretty clear connection with the level of aggressiveness. So that might be one possibility. And so as the men have more testosterone, they're more likely to be aggressive. Women, by the way, have more a more of an ingrown or biological, seemingly, tendency to relate to people, as has been shown in psychological studies. When they feel stressed out, they don't become aggressive, but rather they tend to reach out and comfort and seek comfort from other people, particularly other women, because other women are more interested in that. So there is some sort of biological basis for that. But on the other hand, there's another piece, which seems pretty obvious and pretty well, it seems to be one of the accepted possibilities in sociological research and theory, is that women, one thing definitely obvious about women's lives is that they are the ones who bear the children. And if you think that bearing children starts at maturity and ends, say, about 40, 50 years old, and what was the life expectancy for people until recently? Well, maybe 60, 55, 60. As even those who survived childbirth, because women's average mortality rate was a lot lower because many women would die in childbirth. But even those who grow to a ripe old age, 60 was a very ripe old age. So if you have children until you're 40 or 50, and you're likely to live until 60 or 65, maybe 70, well, probably your whole life is around children and bringing up children until they're old enough. So you don't really, a woman's life by necessity might have been much more focused on the home because of some sort of biological necessity. Obviously, that having children makes somebody a little bit more encumbered. It's carrying around children. If you're carrying one on your stomach and one on your back and one coming along behind you, it's going to be very difficult to do certain sort of tasks. So it would seem that that would be one possibility of why it seems to be pervasive. But that doesn't seem to answer the whole question. Because if you recall, I did mention that there was a particular exception, and that's the Mabuti Tribe. And the Mabuti Tribe of the Pygmies are very egalitarian. But you must take note that they are a hunter-gathering society, which means they're a very primitive society in their economic structure. And in a hunter-gatherer society, the tasks are very equal. Everybody can basically do the tasks. And as the society has grown and mature, there become other types of tasks, particularly as they grow into a gregarian society where one needs to plant and plow, well, actually plow and plant, and there's more, you need more sophisticated tools, and also be able to hold on to stock of seeds, etc. So there becomes some sort of capital, and plowing with oxen takes more strength. So that might actually, possibly, with the beginning of private ownership and physical strength necessary, then it would begin to see the beginning of a reason to assume male dominance. And that's when actually, theoretically, we start to see the male dominance where women are more secluded and subordinated and prized for the as sexual objects. And most of the world actually lives in some sort of agrarian society. And that seems to be the pervasive modus operandi throughout the world. However, in industrial societies, from the Industrial Revolution, although women seem to have a lot more power to work and to be outside of the house, nonetheless, there was still a very much subordinated. But that's when the struggle for equality of the gender began to start in the industrial societies. And when we started to fight for women's suffrage and for women's rights and other things which makes women more equal. And it's particularly in the post-industrial societies, which we have now, that it becomes even more important. But what happens then? If we go back to our other theory, that was the first time where women had a significant proportion of their lives that they were not encumbered by children. Number one. Number two, a significant proportion of women were able to be educated. And number three, because of that, they were a significant portion of women were employed and bringing money home to support the family. So these three things seems to have changed, particularly in the post-industrial societies. Now, that's not to say that we're still not in the process and there's still work to be done. But on the other hand, as we will see later on, that we happen to be in the stages, particularly in the past 40, 50 years, of beginning to see more equality and egalitarian society in the postmodern era, where women and men share their responsibilities. And at the same time, there's beginning to see some differentiation which is not dependent on economic prowess or physical prowess, but maybe some other thing might be coming about.